Welcome to the Lair Secrets podcast. Today we're talking about game conventions past and future. I'm Ken Newquist, and I'm finally reading the Forbidden Lands RPG that I bought a while back. I have all the things. We're going to talk about that later. Yep.
Not the Swedish one, right?
Not the Swedish
English?
one.
All right.
I do still have it on the shelf, but I do not haven't learned Swedish.
Yeah, and I'm David Moore, and I have collected more RPG books thanks to the conventions that I've just recently attended that we'll be talking about right about now.
Yeah, so what did you go to?
Yeah, so I went to two. My wife, Erin, if you've watched the show, you know who that is. She and I are part of a very long-running game called Sparks. It's 27 years old this year. It's a living campaign for West End Games D6 Star Wars. So the really early Star Wars that came out in the late 90s. And there was games at CinCityCon. And so Cincinnati is pretty close to us, being in the Indianapolis area. And so we went there, as did the rest of my family. It's probably one of the few conventions that's remote that we can actually do that with. But this was early October. It was 11th and through the 13th. Drove out there. It was at a new place. It was actually at a weird it was a sports complex. Okay. But they had space. Yeah. They have these big warehousey sort of areas. The building was a refurbished factory or warehouse. Across the street is a hotel that is also a refurbished warehouse that used to house paper and such.
Okay.
It was a nice hotel. It's appropriately named the Warehouse Hotel. But we went there. There was a decent amount of vendors there. It's a smaller con, and probably just a couple, 100 or so people, maybe not even over 200. And I played lots of Star Wars that weekend. And yeah, it was a really good con. We went last year at the previous location, and it was pretty chill then as well. So if you're in the Cincinnati area and want a nice chill con, I would recommend CinCityCon.
Very cool.
The other one that I went to, a bit bigger, was Gamehole Con, and that's in Madison, Wisconsin. And that was October 17th through the 20th. And again, played a lot of Sparks, but also played an escape room called Cabin of the Cackling Man. And it was an interesting sort of story behind the whole thing. And I think escape rooms that have more of a story are a bit more fun to play.
Yes.
Ken, you probably would have liked at least one aspect of this. As part of the story, there is a video game, and it is a Super Nintendo video game, because this is back time-wise set back a little bit in those days, or at least that's when the video game came from.
Okay.
All the other copies of this video game were destroyed. I can't tell you why. But you play the video game as part of the escape room.
Oh, that's
Someone
awesome.
coded up a Super Nintendo. You have the square thumb-killing controllers, and you play through a Zelda, Super Nintendo Zelda-like game. And then at some points you'll get stuck. At that point, there are clues that hopefully the other people in the escape room have been uncovering and things that will get you past that stuck point. At one point, I had to take a piece of acetate with a pattern on it and put it up next to the TV so that in this completely dark room, they knew where the walls were. So it was a lot of fun. We unfortunately did not survive. We got about 75-80% through it, according to the person who was running it. We had a very small group, and it was a very kind of eclectic group. In fact, one person joined about 20 minutes into it. So we had a few handicaps, but the room was set up pretty neat. especially since it was a pop-up escape room. It wasn't a permanent structure. And then as I walked out from that, I've been playing Call of Cthulhu with the Modern Mythos podcast hosts, as well as some of their patrons. So I met Seth Skorkowski online, but as I walked out and I went over to the Cypher System booth that was like on the same level, and I just walked outside, turned the corner, and there's Seth Skorkowski. I knew he was going to be there. I was hoping to see him and say hi, but he was there, and it was pretty cool. It was it was good to see him in person again.
Yes,
because I did see him at Gen. But then after that, I saw him briefly one more time, and then I couldn't find him the rest of the con. They have a really good vendor area. It feels a lot more like Origins, pretty large, pretty calm, but a lot of different vendors out there.
Cool. How big is it?
It's hard to tell because not only are you in the convention center sort of area, but it also spreads out into a connected hotel, at least one. So I'm thinking at least 300-400 people, probably bigger, but it didn't feel that way.
I've heard a lot of people talk about it. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of people that talk about it. I did see a couple of other podcasters, YouTubers there as well, that in passing sort of thing. The one thing that I really wanted to do but couldn't find was, I know that there was supposed to be like a hotel bar sort of thing, but as far as I could tell, the connected hotel didn't have a bar. But usually like game designers and exhibitors and things like that will hang out there, and I was hoping to just go by and say hi, and hopefully we'd be but to no avail. It was probably in the Sheraton that was across the street, but that was like a 10-minute walk away. And so I was like, I don't want to go all the way there to find out they're not there and then have to come all the way back.
Right.
But maybe it was a missed opportunity.
So as a short digression, since you brought up escape rooms, there's an escape room located in Easton, Pennsylvania called Off Center Escape Rooms. They just opened within the last couple of months. I went there with a couple of friends from work. We did it as like a team building thing for the directors of IT at the college I work at. And it was cool. And it had a great story, which was basically there's a hidden speakeasy, and the cops are coming. Nice. And they're grading it. This is during Prohibition. And so you have to figure out how to get into the escape room and ditch all the alcohol to hide it from the cops. And so Easton was a hive of scum and villainy back during Prohibition, or at least like a good place to go for illegal alcohol, right? Like people in New York City would be holding up signs that says Easton, and then you'd get a ride out to Easton. And then, it was just, from what I understand, truly at least a little bit of scum and villainy. But and everybody was in on it. Like the cops knew the raid was coming, and they're just like, they tipped off all of the Prohibition. And so from what I understand, the day that the legend has it that beer ran through the streets of Easton the day of the raid, because like the city collectively was like, beer? What beer? Don't mind that smell. So this escape room actually is part of Easton's, like recreating this part of Easton's history, which I thought was pretty cool. So
that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
So the conventions I'm planning on going to, I've got MEPACon coming up in just a couple of weeks, November 8th through 10th in Bethlehem, PA. I've got a link to it in the show notes. This is the con I've talked about a couple of times before. It's my small local con. It might be like, 200 people, something like that. It's hard. Again, the way it's been spread out, it's hard to kind of get a good head count on exactly how many people there, but there's a goodly number of tables. I had a hard time registering, so I'm registered for the weekend. I've got a couple events that I'm signed up for. I tried to wait list a few. We'll see. Like, I'm just going to go and try and hang out with, at least I'm playing at least one game of Castles and Crusades with a friend. I think I'm signed up for maybe one game of Mothership, but I mean, I just might play some ad hoc stuff. I don't know.
Are you running?
I am not, because I just did not get my act together to finish my adventures in time to be ready for MEPACon. It was just had a lot of stuff going on at work and just not the mental energy to actually get things done. But I'm getting dangerously close on my Mothership one shot. So
I hear that. I'm looking forward to that.
Targeting spring. MEPACon, and then hopefully a playtest for the Lair crew and friends, because I think we had fun with the last Mothership. And me and Mothership maps, everybody loves maps. It's a funnel. It's a Mothership funnel. So I've never run a funnel before, and let alone a Mothership one. But the idea is that you start off with a bunch of 0-level characters, and they're going to die in a variety of interesting and horrible ways. And then whatever character you end up with is the character you would carry forward into an actual campaign. And so my plan is I'm going to write the funnel, run the funnel, and then have 2 follow-up adventures that you could continue with the characters that you had from the previous one. So we'll see. Cool. So that's MEPACon. I'm looking forward to it. At the very least, I get to hang out with some friends, which I think is the key thing, given how exhausting the fall has been. And then we've got Philadelphia Area Game Expo that's coming up in January, actually held outside of Philadelphia. It's like, I think it's like 45 minutes outside of Philly. But I
think it's closer to you than like on the other side of Philly.
Yeah, so I have to see the logistics. I think, I might go down for a day or two. I haven't quite decided yet. There's apparently a fair number of podcasters who might be going to that. I've got friends who really liked it last year. So It's January 16th through the 19th, 2025. It's close. It feels like I don't want to go to PAX Unplugged because it's too big and chaotic. I mean, I don't mind chaos, but it's perfected disorganization as an organizing principle. It's disorganized on purpose, and I applaud them for their efforts, but it's a little too much for me. So Philadelphia Area Game Expo sounds like a more traditional sort of convention, and there's been a lot of like sort of old school Renaissance and guests that are from like the early days of gaming that they've had at the show. So that would be interesting because
that is also another draw for Gamehole Con, which I really should have mentioned. Ed Greenwood was there. Several other people from that era of like TSR were also there there, and they give a big panel on the history. I did not get into that one, but there's a big panel on the history of TSR from the people who lived through it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Very nice, very nice. So those are the cons I have coming up. Maybe I'll have something later. Then there would be MEPACon again in the spring. It's held twice a year, so that's probably sometime in April or March. I can figure it out, put it in the show notes. But that's the one I'm going to gear toward. I'm going to gear up for and try and run 2 or 3 events. And I got to say, the thing I was kind of killing myself with, which was trying to run 3 RPGs, and I reminded myself that I don't need to run 3 RPGs. I could just run a board game, or I could run 1 RPG and like Space Hulk and Risk 2210 or some other thing.
RPG 3 times.
1 RPG 3 times. I could run the funnel twice, right? Like, there's a couple of options that can cut down on game prep because we're busy people. Like, I thought the kids going to college was going to buy me more time. It has not.
Yep.
Not that much.
So, tell us about Forbidden Lands here.
Yeah, so it's cool. It's got these. So I think I'm going to do a unboxing times 2. Show you my gaming stuff, I guess, because I do have the box set. I never actually we weren't doing unboxings when I got it, which was like I think 2 years ago at this point. So it's got this faux leather book. It's very pretty. And so I've been reading through the player's handbook, and I've just heard so much good stuff about it. It comes up in the Solo Game Master's Guide as an example of a game that is very easy to run as a solo game. And,
is that the Modifius one?
The Modifius one we got it.
Okay.
I got it Gen Con in 23. And also I'm a sucker for new game mechanics. And I've been tooling with this idea of wanting to run an open table campaign where I pick a night, like 2 nights a month, and say on this Thursday, I'm running a game. If you would like to show up, great. And then if you want to show up to the next session, great, but you're not obligated. Make it self-contained, kind of like a lunchtime game thing, except make it sure that it gets done in a single day. So it's self-contained. And so I've been thinking about Shadowdark is one of the games that's in the running. Dragonbane is another. And then I thought, well, I have Forbidden Lands, and I love the hexcrawl thing, which could work well as an episodic, self-contained sort of adventure type thing, but with themes that carry it together. This game is way crunchier than I thought it was.
I have the PDF, and I started reading through it, and the way I had understood it before I bought it was not the actuality of Forbidden Lands. Like I had expected a lot more rules light than Forbidden Lands actually is.
Yeah, so I have I'm going to take these out when I do the unboxing. They do not actually come with the box set, which I think is actually a drawback to the box set because
Mm.
you get everything except for the dice, and it kind of wants you to use the dice. You don't need to.
Are they
It's
special
just
dice?
sort of. So when you have roll a success, it's a 6, and they have just an X on it to indicate it's a success. And then if you roll a 1, that's a bane, and if you do that, then it's a negative thing, and there's a skull on it. So
Gotcha.
you could get away with doing this without really needing to use the specialized dice, but they're pretty, so I wanted to get them. But the thing is that it's a dice pool based game, so you get some dice for your attribute bonus, right? So you have like a strength bonus, and you get dice for that, and then you've got different dice for skills, and then you have still other dice for gear. And when you fail, you can generate exhaustion or other various effects that diminish the capacity of your character, degrade your gear, right? So there's a mechanic for repairing your gear. It's just it's not super crunchy. Like it's not like D&D 5th edition levels of complexity. You do have the equivalent of edges and what have you in terms of, or feats, like bonus things that your character can do. But it's the core mechanic is you roll your dice, you see if you got any successes. The ones don't count then. When you push your luck, you can basically generate additional successes, but then the ones count, and they count as failures.
Okay.
And then these different mechanics can trigger special abilities through these feats / edge things, right? And so I haven't quite gotten to it yet. And so my inkling is, I think this is a really cool game. I love the art. I love the background, but I think I need to really understand it before I can try and run it for anyone else. So I'm thinking about doing it as a solo game, just
because you can play it as a solo game, right?
I think you can play anything as a solo game. I think it lends itself to it because I think the nature of the mechanics and the nature of the challenges and what have you, I think it would be very easy to run it as a solo game.
Gotcha.
Which is, I think, why people go to it. Does it come with
like little hexes for your hexcrawl stuff? I seem to recall.
Yeah, so it comes with a map, and it comes with stickers. And so this is I was thinking about doing a YouTube video, use them or not, because I posted on Dice Camp and people were like, oh no, maybe it was Discord. They're like, I'm not using the stickers. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I'm like, I'll make a copy of the map, get it printed, but I'm not messing up my new map. I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of the attraction of the game, right?
It's like well, like when I bought Gloomhaven and I knew about the stickers, and I'm like, if I want to play the initial thing multiple times, like with different groups of people, I'm not going to be able to do that. But someone had, and I think it was actually the Gloomhaven people, but maybe not, had come out with kind of like, do you remember color forms where they were like vinyl and kind of stuck?
Yes.
They came out with the stickers for Gloomhaven on that type of non-adhesive sticker-ish stuff. And so I bought that. And because it takes so long to set up and use, I've not done any of it.
I was going to say, the thing is that's what your brain thinks. But the reality is you'll be lucky if you play through it once. So why not just destroy it as God intended?
If I'm able to find the right group of people that are willing to deal with the setup and the breakdown and the little fiddly bits, I'm just going to do it.
That's why I got Jaws of the Lion. It's much simpler version, right? And I still have that too.
I have that too. So you were mentioning, I'm trying to remember what it was.
Shadowdark.
Yeah, but it was something else. But it doesn't really matter.
Dragonbane?
This is our great segue.
Yes.
I had a perfect thing, and then of course we talked more, and it flew out of my head. But it was I played Shadowdark in person. Now I remember the segue. I am also doing a open table sort of game day, which was this last Sunday. I was like, hey, anybody who's available, sent out kind of a wide invitation. Come over, we're going to play a game, and we're going to do this on a weekly basis. And whoever shows up, we're going to play. So
brilliant.
Yeah, it worked. Only one person showed up because the other person who said they were going to come forgot they said that they were going to come and went to an Amped Guard LARP thing, 2 hours away. But we still had, my daughter was home from college this weekend, and there's a whole story about coming home to vote, but not being able to and having to go vote where she's at college. But anyway, so I had 3 players. And so we sat down. I knew this was coming, so I did a fair amount of prep. One of the things that Shadowdark has that I really wanted to play with was the torch timer.
Yes.
The torch is any light source, any basic light source lasts 1 hour real time. If you've heard about Shadowdark before, you have definitely heard of this mechanic.
Right.
And so I was looking around for a bunch of different VTTs that might be able to do dynamic lighting that I could build in with the torch timer. My Roll20 account was kind of borked because I'm a backer, but I subscribed at one point, and then the subscription, I let the subscription lapse, but it sent me back to the very basic, not the backer level. And so I have 0, I'm like 5,000% over my quota for any sort of asset. So uploading the Shadowdark, uploading the map, we played the Lost Citadel of the Scarlet Minotaur, which is in the Quick Start Guide.
I saw that.
I got the Quick Start Guide, which is free, but I printed out several copies of the player's book to give to everybody. So we had the base rules, but then I also had the main rule book at the table just in case.
Gotcha.
But I finally landed on Foundry VTT. I've been hearing about it and hearing about it and hearing about it. And I'm like, let's give it a try. And so I looked, it had dynamic lighting. Great. Hey, it also had a free community module of Shadowdark, all the Shadowdark rules. And what do you know? The quick start with the module in it. So I had 0 setup to do other than making sure that I could set up Foundry. So I had the player map up on the TV in the living room where we were playing. There's a way on the player side that there's an extra plugin for Foundry that I think that's the only one that I actually added because there's extensions that the community can make. But it hides the entire UI. So all they had on the screen was the map. They didn't have any chats or anything else because we weren't using it.
Right.
One of the things in there though is because it has the pre-generated characters, and that's what I handed out to everybody. It has a torch timer built in.
Oh, nice.
So they're going through and they get into a combat with these skeletons. That was actually a random encounter, and they're fighting them. They like hit the last one. It's like, okay, all right, that was it. Great, we're done. Screen goes black. And they're like, what just happened? It's like, torch just ran out.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because it's one of the fogs of war that doesn't leave, like, part of the other reason, I think there's a way you can set it so that it leaves the area you've explored kind of like in a grayscale sort of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't have that on because I wanted them to feel, oh crap, we're lost.
Right.
But they were actually really smart because the entrance they went in, Aaron actually went, okay, seems like we're in a bit of a maze because the entrance they had was maze-like. Place my left hand against the wall and we start walking. So every turn they made the left, and so they knew that if they just turned around and put their hand on the right hand on the wall, they could get out.
So did they only have the one torch?
They had one torch lit. They had like 5 torches, but they only had one lit, and there were only 3 of them. So like the torch encompassed all of them, and so that was fine, and it was just enough to see and fight by. But yeah, as soon as that torch went out, it was like, if that torch had gone out a round before, because they took down several skeletons in that round, if it had gone out when that round started, they would have been in serious trouble. Because as soon as it goes out, all of the denizens in Shadowdark, or majority of them, are dark adapted, so they can fight without any issue. So they'd see like the 2 red eyes of the skeletons, and that's about it. Shadowdark has no dark vision, no infravision, no blind sight, nothing that the characters can have. that allows them to see in the dark. So any attacks they have are at disadvantage. All sorts of stuff happens. When you're in the dark, wandering encounters happen more often because you're kind of stumbling around,
Gotcha.
etc. They hurriedly got their torch running and continued on with the adventure. So I really like that. The other thing, once that torch was there, the one thing that Foundry didn't have, and it's probably just because I couldn't find it, was there isn't an easy way to see that the torch is running out. Other than if you have your character sheet open, there's 4 dots on the character sheet, and they'll go from filled to empty as you go. And if you roll over it, it'll tell you how much time you have.
Gotcha.
But it didn't, like, there's no easy way to see it on screen.
Gotcha.
As a fun project, I did a little electronics project like last month because I was like, I want to do this if I ever run Shadowdark. There's these little bulbs that have like flame effect from LEDs in it. And this particular one, if you turn it on, it can do flame effect. It can be solid, or it can be kind of like a breathing sort of effect. And every time you turn it off and turn it back on, it goes to the next one. So I just put together this little Arduino with a relay, and it is supposed to be screwed in, but it's LEDs. It can actually run on like 3 to 5 volts. So I just plugged the Arduino and the relay in there and ran it off of a battery, an extra battery. And so the next torch, I had gone up and gotten that, even though the wires are sticking out all over the place,
right.
But turned it on and it was like, okay, here's an indication of your hour. So it's like solid for the first 20 minutes. And then because of the relay, you'll hear an audible click, but then you'll see that it's no longer solid. It's doing that kind of breathing, pulsing thing. And then in the last 20 minutes, it's just like, here's the last embers of your flickering flame that your torch is going to go out within the next 20 minutes. So it gave them kind of an idea of how long it was going to last without telling them exactly how long it was going to last. It was a good time.
That's really cool. So what I was going to show you and describe for the audience is there's a cool website called torchlighttimer.com. And let's see, it's a little thing here. So torchlighttimer.com, you just click light torch and you have a torch. And it actually burns down, right? And so if I click on this, there's a couple of different settings you can do, but I can remove time. And so as I remove time, you can see it it starts to go down, right? And then it starts flickering. So it's gone from bright yellow and brilliant down to I'm at 4 minutes, and it's like this guttering reddish flame. And there's one for magical light.
What's hardcore mode?
Hardcore mode is so it removes the time, and you can't you can't modify it. So hardcore, normally it's displaying the time and you can choose to pause or skip ahead or add more time or whatever. Hardcore mode, you can't touch it all. You can't see the time. All you can see is the slowly burning torch.
Gotcha. So since I was casting my screen, I was casting a tab. I'd have to figure out if I can do this with 2, because I could hit the button pretty close to give them that thing, but like having the map and then the torch timer right next to it, I think would be really cool to look at.
Yes. Yeah. So it was a very cool visual effect. If I get to, I'm seriously leaning towards Shadowdark because it's a 5e derivative.
Yeah.
A lot of the same rules. People I'm interested in inviting are beginners, but have some experience with D&D. And so
it's
I think it would be a
very stripped down D&D. You have talents, but they're kind of randomized. When you would normally get a feat, you roll on your talent for your class.
Right.
And like, I recommend, if you're going to run it the first time, I just recommend running the quick start. Like, hand out the pre-gen characters and go. Cause like, there's not a lot that you need to do to create a character. And that's partly by design, because you don't have a lot of hit points. You start with whatever your class is in hit points plus your constitution bonus at first level. When you level up, you only get the die. You don't get your constitution bonus every level. So you only get what you roll on the die, which really severely limits your hit points overall. So like, even if you're 5th level, you may not have a lot of hit points. the one thing I did do during that, because it was, and I don't know if this was intended or not, I gave them XP as they were going along. So they actually leveled up to level 2 midway through the dungeon. So that was pretty cool. The one thing when I was giving them XP that I realized that I hadn't realized before, because it was right after the skeleton fight, and they're like, "Can we get XP?" Because they were all feeling it. They hadn't been injured yet, but they were all feeling it. And then I looked in the book and I realized, hey guys, you don't get XP from combat at all. You only get XP from doing cool stuff and getting treasure. That's it.
That's pretty old school.
So it actually, but it also incentivizes avoiding fights.
True.
It doesn't incentivize getting into fights.
Yeah. So
unless sorry, I was just going to say, unless the big bad has a really nice magic weapon.
Well, right. Or a big chest full of gold coins that are clinking off his shoulder as he's walking through the dungeon, right? Yeah, I really like it. I gave up reading through it so I could delve into Forgotten Lands, and I do want to go back to Dragonbane, which I think may be the sweet spot between the two. But
it seemed like it when I played it, when I made the character but couldn't play it. See an earlier episode about talking about that.
Yes, and duck people.
And duck people, which is awesome.
Yes. So I mean, I may just play it just to be able to have a mallard as a character, because I kind of really want one. But we'll see. We'll see. I may run one of each and see which people like, and then we go with that. It's going to be a long, dark winter.
I still love that the mallards in there effectively have Donald Duck syndrome. Like,
yes,
they're very sensitive and just fly off the handle if they feel, I don't know, threatened or belittled or whatever. Like, that's built into the character class, and you actually get some bonuses because of that, which is pretty cool.
We'll see. I'm going to read a bunch of stuff. Hey, actually finish an RPG. Finish reading an RPG. How about that? That's just crazy talk. So anyway, the Overlords, thank you for your attendance in this episode. As a reminder, those sitting next to the anti-grav generator, I cannot stress this enough. Please refrain from pressing the big red button on the way out. We've just got everything back where we wanted it. We don't need to upset the layout of the lair.
It's so hard to move stuff when you turn the gravity back on.
Yeah. So, for future experiments and secret transmissions, like and subscribe. You can also hit the bell icon without obvious consequences. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, if you hit the red button, the generator goes off.
Yes.
The bell icon, that one's safe to press. So,
at least in the lair, who knows what happens in your house?
There's no obvious effect to the bell icon. You'll learn it later. But it's okay. Trust us.
Yes, definitely trust us.